Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, Don Spector here, finally with another headphone review. I know it takes me a long time to make headphone reviews, and it has been forever since I made my last one, but now I have it here after the unboxing of the HE6SE version 2. Here, the review for it. And as usual, packaging accessories, but I think I can make this very short. I got this refurbished, so I got it in a random box, in a foam block that was safe enough. And as accessories you do get. Which brings me to the next part of the review, the cable. Yes, if you've heard with people, the infamous Hifiman cables, yeah, this is exactly what they were talking about. You can see it bending here with a kink and here, and this will happen whenever you use it. It's just, it's a bad cable. Like, it is of course getting the job as a cable done, it transmits audio, but it's just so bad. It's not ergonomic, it keeps tangling, it gets these weird bending spots, and yeah, it feels like surgical tubing. That's how it feels, and it's the best way how I can describe it. Adding insult to injury is, for me at least, this thing here is super heavy. Like, I don't know, if I would plug this in my amp, like this hangs like this, like you can see in an almost 90-degree bend. That's a bit harsh. Like, also here there's no strain release, so I assume this will break on you in some time because it's too much strain on the cable. It just bends a bit much here. But at least I like that they use heavy, great materials. Like this is thick as here. And also the locking pin does a great job. It just stays in extremely solid. And you need to just push it in and then it goes out relatively easy. So I like that you have an XLR to 6.3mm cable included here. It's just, this thing is too heavy. It's just too much for the flimsiness of this cable here. And also it doesn't working for the price for me is this plastic piece. Oof, this looks so cheap. I really don't like it. And then you go from this cable, which is not great and somehow like has the same thickness of actual conductor, I think, to this here. And the top is even more floppy. Like really not a good cable at all. The only thing positive I can talk about it is that this is terminating in 2 times 3.5mm, which is a great connector for headphones to have, and it's white on black with LNR indicator. Better would still be if it would be color coded, but Hifiman doesn't give you that. And oh my god, see, I just flipped it down and see how this cable here bends. It's not intentional, it just happens all of the time. This is a bad cable, and I would strongly Hifiman to just throw all of these in the garbage, all of them out, this is literal garbage, and give us cables that are usable. Like literally the cable I'm using was, I think, $10 or I don't know, $15 or something like that. And wait, let me just get it a bit in the picture so you can see. This is the cable I've been using it. It's smooth. It has color-coded LNR indicators. It is not tangly most of the time. This thing here is made out of metal. And yeah, you can see you could actually also maintain it. And the 8 cores here, like it feels much better and it's so cheap. Why do you give us this garbage when this can be had for like literally like 10, 15, $20 depending on how long you want it? Yeah, okay, sorry for the rant. I know, let's get it out. I have enough Hifiman cable for today. Let's come back to headphone. Yeah, Headphone Built, and I think you can see my modification already. Let me remove it so we can quickly check out the build. Actually, no, I will talk about comfort first. I will remove it and talk about comfort by doing so. So, generally this is a relatively heavy headphone on your head. And for a heavy headphone, you should in theory have a thick headband, a headband that is nicely cushioned, or better, like a very wide headband, so the weight is distributed over a nice width. And you also don't want hot spots, that means you should either shape it relatively ergonomic, or even better, you use something as like a flexible headband like the Sandara has, so it just conforms to your head size. It just does this depending on how your head works. Well, let's check this out. Not ergonomic, very hard foam, doesn't really conform well to your head shape. Yeah, this is really one of the most uncomfortable headphones I've worn in a long time, I have to say. And I tried to like it without the mod, but I can't. Like after like 15-20 minutes, it hurts my head. It's not uncomfortable, it actually hurts my head. I definitely have a hot spot also. I think mine is like here and here, because I have no contact in the middle. And that means really hot spots here, super uncomfortable if it just hurt me. And how to redeem this, I have this buff. So it's on the winter, you put it on your neck or something like that, and you just fold it like this over, so it's like 2 thick layers, and with that it's okay. But Unfortunately, I've not been able to get the modded headband, which you basically hang in here and here and gives you like an axial like head strap here. It would be comfortable. I have not managed to get that in for review. And also, if I would have had, I think I would have also not put it in here because it's a bit unfair to rate a modded headphone versus one that's not modded. I will probably do a second review where I talk about how it sounds modded, because yeah, you can remove the grills and put on your own, and how it also feels when it is modded on your head. So this one strictly is stock. This is how it is out of the box. And thankfully, unlike the horrible headband, which really is one of the worst I have worn, the pads are nice. Let's check them out here. So you can see this is a nice, squishy, relatively deep ear pad. My ears don't touch your back at all. And yeah, it also is not too squishy, so you shouldn't lean through in some time. And in my experience with the Sandaras, for instance, when I've worn them since, I don't know, like 2.5-3 years or so, the foam itself holds up nicely. Unfortunately, though, I can't say the same about the material used here. This is artificial leather, and yeah, my Sandara is really, it's flaking apart, and I have been careful with them, but still it's just flaking apart. And I would really like to see Hifiman, come on, at this price point, give us real leather, please. I mean, this headphone is also old, like, come on, give us real leather pads, please. I don't like this artificial leather. Like, I like that it's, again, it's hybrid, so you have a nice soft suede here that is definitively feeling very nice to the touch. But because, yeah, the rest of it is artificial leather, it will flake apart in not too long in the future. So I don't like that. So yeah, comfort, if you get it modded, like just anything on top, it will be fine, but it's just not the greatest because, yeah, this headband is just not nice. One thing I do like though, that this finally is able to swivel, as you can see here, about like 10-15 degrees in both directions. The swivel mechanism doesn't feel the most solid, like you can hear a bit. Let me get it to the mic. I hope you can hear it a bit squeaking and a bit. It's not the greatest mechanism, but overall it's fine and it gets the job done to be comfortable. Also, these pads are angled. Just a quick side note here, which also can help with comfort. And yeah, that concludes my comfort chapter, I think. Like, without mods, not comfortable at all, like horrible headband. If you put anything to distribute the weight better on the headband, you will be okay. And now we come to the actual headphone build. And yeah, I'm sorry, Hifiman, the Sandara is better built. This feels cheap. It feels like the HE6SE to me. Like, this is plastic, and I think even the inlet here that is supposed to lock this is also plastic. I just don't like it. Like, why don't you give us a metal chassis? Why does it need to be cheap plastic? Also adding to the cheap feeling, this ring here that is nice for modding, give it them, like this is easily removable, so you can change your mesh or remove it completely. But it's also cheap feeling plastic. Like, it's not even nice feeling. It's just, it's cheap. And yeah, it's just also does look a bit cheap. Like, genuinely, this is not a great headphone. I mean, especially considering the original pricing of, what was it, 1,500 bucks? What the fuck? For 1,500 bucks, this is horrible. Like, if I would get this for this price, I would go back the first day. Like, for like now, like 400-ish bucks. Hard sell, but because it sounds so nice later on, I can live with it. But this is not the greatest build. And yeah, I got a refurbished unit. That means it had a few scratches, like very minor scratches here. But everything else seems to be fine. And also the headband, like the sewing here is done fine. But again, it's artificial leather from what I can tell. And this is just going to flake on you in not so long in the future. I would just like to see real leather, please. It's just a better material, like lasts longer, more comfortable, doesn't sweat so much. Like, it's just a better material. Give us real leather, please. And yeah, last but not least in terms of build, I think the hinges, we can quickly talk about those. Those are thick metal, as you can see. It's like 2 millimeters, I think. This is the nicest part of the headphone, these hinges. And then also the screws in here, easily maintainable. And they're also kept relatively sturdy in here. So you can see like it's high resistance, it just stays as it is. That is nice. And then last but not least, the driver on the inside, you can see the actual diaphragm through it. That's pretty cool. But you still get a protective mesh in front of it. Same as the back. So your driver should be fine overall. But again, how this plops in here, it just feels a bit cheap overall. And also this mesh, like the general metal mesh with the like fabric behind it, also looks a bit cheap. Like, I don't know, like I've seen better made headphones for less. And I would say the Sandara genuinely feels well made, like better made than this headphone overall. Which is a shame because Sandara, while sounding very nice and natural, it's not as engaging as this one. And yeah, last thing, 3.5mm sockets seem to be integrated exactly the same as they are on the HE4XX. So it's fine, but for the pricing, it could be better. And now, yeah, after we tackled these, isolation, open back, it sounds very open to me, definitively more open than biodynamic headphones. So it's very open sounding generally and you have no isolation whatsoever. Also means everybody around you will be able to hear what you listen to. So yeah, maybe not the best choice if you live in the same room as your partner. But yep, that's all it is. Next, drivability, and yeah, you have probably heard it. This bad boy takes a lot of power to be driven. I think recommendation online is, I think, like 1.5 watts or something like that. Yeah, and I can tell you, just getting this loud is not so much of an issue. Most of the dongles I had, including the DS2 and DS1, managed to get this easily loud enough. It just lacks a bit pizzazz after that. The DS2 has about, I think, 500 or 600 milliwatts, something like that. That managed to get it more than loud enough. And it also sounded actually kind of decent. And when you go a bit more up, VVT1 had 800. And my laptop, I don't know how much that has, but it also sounds like it has like watts or so of power. It's fine. Like, it sounds actually pretty competitive or yeah. It actually sounds pretty compelling there, but you actually need a bit more power in order to drive it there. So yeah, my desktop setup is definitely needed for this. This is a topping D53 and A53, and this has definitely way too much power for this. Like my setup has like 3 watts or so, because I run it balanced. It's not needed, but you should try to get something around like 1 watts, maybe a bit more. Just have a bit of headroom for best dynamics. But yeah, just saying, if you want to plug this in your computer or your laptop, don't. It will sound good. I'm not gonna lie, I'm saying you get probably like 80% or so of this can, maybe 70 if your source is like the DS1 dongle that has a bit less power than DS2. But still, get yourself a dedicated amp for this. This will definitively improve it. And yeah, as I said, like 80% on the DS2, I would say, with like 500 to 600 milliwatts, something like that. And then my desktop setup gave me a full 100. That sounded nice and punchy. That gave me everything I wanted. But it also has 3 watts, so take that as you will. Like, I don't have anything at like 2 watts or like 1.8. I just don't have it at the moment. So yeah, only my desktop setup and then the different dongles. And then we come to general sound characteristics. Yeah, again, I will throw you on the graph and I compare it mostly to the Sandara because I really like the Sandara. It's one of my favorite tuned headphones. And as you can see by graph, this is completely different. This is classic Hifimans signature. That means it has a relatively late and then very abrupt pinna gain, more treble than neutral would call for, and then also a good amount of upper treble energy. And that means generally this comes off as a very engaging headphone. It's from planar, very dynamic from what I can hear, and it has a lot of air on top, giving you a really nice feeling of details. And yes, absolutely, it is too much. Like, this is not a natural tonality in the upper treble. Totally, no question there. But when I put on Fusion Jazz albums like 470 PM or yeah, whatever, damn, there's a lot of detail happening there. It's a lot of pizzazz, a lot of splash, a lot of sizzle. And really, I have the feeling I get all of the details there are. And from my memory, it is actually pretty damn close to Visa Swara. Like, when I listened to it on Kenjam last year, not this year, I was like, it's effortless detail and it's kind of engaging, but it's also like, not that engaging. This one is more engaging to me, and it gets me, I would say, like most of the details you will ever be able to hear, you get with this. Like, there isn't much more coming after that. And yeah, mid-treble, again, it's a bit more pronounced as I think neutral would call for. I would say it does not reach into the spicy category to me, but I think some people will definitely find this a bit spicy there. But I'm treble head, I can admit this, and for metal or for fusion jazz, for normal jazz, classical, orchestral, doesn't matter, it all sounds great with the Sandara, like really, with the HE6SE version 2. Sandara, again, different boat, much more natural, not really as engaging overall, but much more natural sounding. This one is just much more engaging, much more fun, much more spicy. Sorry for the interruptions again. Vehicles or firefighters or ambulance have been driving outside of my window like no free time, so sorry for that. So yeah, as I said, mid-treble, upper-treble, more pronounced than you would want, but in a nice way. There isn't an 8K peak that is too bad for me, so I'm very sensitive to 8K. Like, it has some spice at 8K, I think like 2-3 decibels too much maybe, but generally it's well balanced mid to upper treble. It is bright, oh, don't make a mistake here, it's pretty bright, but it's very nice bright to me, and like almost as perfect as I would want bright headphones to be. And yeah, lower treble / upper mids, yeah, I mean, you can see the graph is peaking at like 3 to 4K relatively strongly, and I assume this is probably what most people won't like when they don't like this. It's just pretty bright. And also with the relatively late pinna gain here, yeah, this means the ratio of fundamentals to harmonics is a bit off in my opinion. Like, it just sounds not as natural as female vocals should, also some male vocals should. They just don't sound as natural as they could be. But again, because we have a generally balanced mid to upper treble region here with good amount of energy all the way to 20K, it doesn't sound as bad as the graph might make it. You see this and you think, oh man, the female vocals will be pretty hollow or recessed here. And yes, there's a slight hollow effect on female vocals. Nier Automata soundtrack demonstrates this basically perfectly. I would describe it as slightly hollow, absolutely. But the graph doesn't indicate how bad. Like, really, the graph just says, shows you it looks pretty bad. But you listen to it and you're like, actually, it's just slightly hollow. And I think this is due to the way, like, the driver here is really good. Like, I can't praise the driver enough. The driver is really, really good. And we talk more about this in bass chapter. But yeah, I can totally understand why people say this isn't really nice sounding headphone, and I'm absolutely of the same opinion. And yeah, that brings me then to the mids. And yeah, similar to the Sandara, I think the mids are pretty forward. It's not as mid-forward or mid-centric as Sandara, for sure, but the mids are still better than the graph would indicate here. It does not come off as, I want to say, as like this natural sounding overall, but really, like, when I listen to Linkin Park with this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is nice vocal. Like, absolutely, they are well presented. They are not forward, but forward enough to be like, oh yeah, I don't miss anything. And again, female vocals with the dip a bit later, like, it sounds slightly unnatural, but the graph does over-exaggerate this a bit. Like, in real life, it's not as bad. And yeah, because you have just linear extension all the way into the bass, yeah, the lower mids also sound absolutely fine to me. They don't sound overly pronounced. They don't sound underly pronounced. They just make bass guitars sound full. They make also piano notes sound generally full. And yeah, I have no problems with the lower mids whatsoever here. And then bring me to bass, and and this is one of those cases. If you look at this graph, it's flat. If you listen to it, oh man, this baby hits. It's one of those things, if you would ask me to draw a graph from it, I would say this is at least 3 decibels more mid to sub bass. It sounds so engaging. Like, it just bam, it slams, man, it slams. So really, I can't praise the bass enough. Like, for how flat it is and how little it intervenes with the mids, it's so slammy. It's definitively, from my memory, slammier than the Sasvara. And I know people will say, Sasvara is 10 times the price, of course it's better. I don't perceive it like that. This one just slams. When I listen to Sasvara, it didn't slam, but this one does. And that means in my metal tracks, like Linkin Park, for instance, damn, does the bass slap. Papa Roach, nice. Synthwave soundtracks, like Lots of Synth from Isolde, yeah, it's slapping, baby, it's slapping. And then the Space Jam soundtrack, that's like R&B, popish, man, it also slaps. It's just nice. It doesn't interfere with the mids, it just slaps exactly how I would want the slap to be. Also, then we come to Fusion Jazz, 4.17 PM from Katsutoshi Morizono, and it is such well done bass. It's fast, it slaps, it's immediately gone when you want it. Like, it's really textured as well. So really, if you come for something for Sasvara, for HE6SE, and I would say Sasvara couldn't, bass slap. I have the feeling this slams, while I never had the feeling the Sasvara slammed. That's good. Unfortunately, though, and again, don't be fooled by the graph. This extends all the way to 20 Hz. The sub bass is not as nice as I would want it. My benchmark track here, Interstellar's Mountains, has a bass note that starts at like 2 minutes 10 and drops all the way to 2 minutes 16 to exactly 20 Hz or even below that. It's not the greatest. It reaches 2 minutes 14 without much texture, but at 2 minutes 15 it's completely gone. It's like there's no perceived sub bass more, and that means generally this, while having sub bass and you do get a nice rumble there, it's not the most textured sub bass there is, and it's not the most sub bass forward headphones I have heard. But for an open back headphone, damn, is this good. It's one of those things, if you ask me to draw a line, I would say at least 3 to 4 decibels, maybe 5 decibels more bass. It just sounds so nice. And that brings me to the rest of the technicalities. And fortunately, Soundstage layer and imaging is good, but I can't confirm when people said it's great. So yeah, it has a decent soundstage, and most instruments find where they exactly how they want or how they should be, so they are separated well, they have a nice space there, and it's definitely an upgrade from the Sandara in one sense, especially because the Sandara I describe as a bit of a Pringles soundstage. Like it sounds a bit like you're listening in a light tube, like it is not separated as well in the room as you would want. This one does better, but also not the best. I assume the bigger driver, the X-shaped Hifimans probably do better there in a longer comparison, but it's not bad at all, the soundstage here. Like I would say it's definitely bigger than average, but not as big as you would read in some other reviews. And layering, I mean, it's a headphone. It has most of the time 3 layers to me. It don't really get with 5 layers or even more, but I can get with IEMs. But it's fine. It gives you still a decent distribution horizontally, vertically, and yeah, just in general like good feeling of where sound is happening around you. It's just not as layering strong as IEMs would be. And that brings me to the next chapter and the last one before verdict: separation, dynamics, coherence. And yeah, as expected, separation is really good with this one. It's, I want to say, a pretty strong point and absolutely an upgrade from the Sandara in sense here. I think parts of it is probably also a good part, at least due to the frequency response, because yes, this has more treble than Sandara in its entirety, so it's just generally more treble forward. And also the upper mids being not as strongly pronounced means this will come off as a bit separating and very dynamic as well. Like if you would put this on blind on my head, I think, and like 3 of 7 days, I would say it could be dynamic driver. It's really nicely dynamic here and absolutely beats the Sandara and basically every other planar I've heard so far. Probably also aided by the slam it has in the bass. It's one of those things. If I perceive bass as slamming, I most of the time think it's a dynamic. And that's exactly the feeling I had here. It slams, and the planar pluggedness isn't pronounced too strong. I think if you really listen to it, you might be able to hear it, but personally, I don't think the overall timbre and the general like planar pluggedness is pronounced in a way here that would be noticeable to me. It's really good sounding overall, and I don't have any problems with the coherence or timbre. Again, I think if you really want to hear it, you probably could. I personally would say it's not there enough for me to criticize it. And that brings me to the verdict. And yeah, as I was raving about the sound here, I can totally confirm the verdict. This is easily the best sounding sub 500 euro headphones out there. I can say it like that. I'm pretty confident because it sounds so goddamn good. It slams. It's really nice, engaging. It has a really nice treble presentation out there. Again, you have to like treble. If you don't like treble and you're not treble head like me, I think this is too much. But you can fix it. Just bring down everything past the pinna again by like 3 decibels. This would make it much more natural sounding, give you a probably more natural overall timbre, and you would still maintain the nice bass slam it has. And that means, while sound-wise, this is really, really great. And it probably gets you most of the Versa Swara will get you probably like 95%, maybe 99%. Diminishing returns, yeah, well in the realm of that here. So I would say at least 90% there. The problem with this is the comfort. This is where Hifiman cheaped out as hell. It's really the headband. It's so bad. Like I couldn't bring myself to listen to this with the headband without my modification. Again, I will maybe make a second review later with the mods. That means without the grills or with the more open grills and with the better headband. But as it stands, this cannot be recommended in my books because the headband is just so horrible. It's one of those things where I think this could be almost torture device. You put it on and you have head pain after like 20 minutes or so. It's really not good. And that combined with the cable, that is really bad, basically means you also need to buy a separate cable for this headphone in order to use it. And then you still have a heavy headphone. And that means while the Swara wasn't super light, when I had it on my head, I was like, oh, that's actually lighter than I expected. It fits pretty well. This doesn't give you this feeling. And that's so bad because it sounds so nice. And I just feel a bit in this weird position where I would say sound-wise, this is so good. It probably beats everything sub-1000 easily. But it's just so uncomfortable. And the cable is so bad that I'm saying, no, this can't be recommended. Like, if I make a version free, use the goddamn Sandara headband. Use the Sandara headband, keep the swiveling here, but please fix the headband. With this, I would easily recommend this, even with the shitty cable. But at this price point of like 400 or 450 bucks, that you can get this most of the time now, I can't recommend it. Like really, the build is not good enough for that, the comfort is horrible, and the cable, it can't be recommended. But if you are just there for the sound, if you're just there for the best sound at any price at the moment, where you say, I don't want to spend $1,000, this is it. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. I will recommend this if you only after sound, and if your head is made out of concrete, and if you don't care about a shitty cable and about cheap build, then I will recommend this. But in all other cases, if anything of this matters to you, if like any of this matters, I can't be recommended. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, recommendations, if you have criticisms, please leave a comment. Don Spector out.